Teachers of Reddit, what are the weirdest, the most inexplainable thing your students have done? One 8th grader decided to perform an interpretive dance for everyone at the start of class. She was a quiet, sensitive kid, so I just let her have her few minutes in the spotlight. She really into it, but it was very awkward to watch. All the other kids just stared at one another with a WTF expression on their faces. ETA, I forgot to mention that she provided her own music. It sounded something like Enya. The kid also took off her shoes and pranced around and between kids' desks. When I was in middle school, there was a boy who in all honesty shouldn't have been in the main classes. He had to have an aide with him at all times, wore noise cancelling headphones in the hall to keep him calm. One day he decided to get up and reenact an entire episode of Ed, and Eddie in the middle of class. I had a student who wasted copious amounts of paper, staples, and tape by making hundreds of paper iPads and laptops. They were all kinds of different sizes and he colored them and everything. When we did notes, he pretended to type the notes on his paper computer. He tried to sell them to the other kids, but they wouldn't pay him what he wanted. He moved on to paper swords and made a lot more money. Dang, what an industrious kid. I wouldn't even be upset, just amazed. One of my kids borrowed a pencil once, and then systematically ate the pencil. He was in 7th grade. He even chewed up the metal part until it was basically unrecognizable. I have a lot. I've done that before, but only to my own pencils. I'm not gonna destroy a pencil someone else could be using. Who has something for show and tell me? Me. I have something, student. Okay, come on up. Now what did you bring today? Nothing. Then why did you raise your hand? Because my dad is crazy. The kid just needed a forum. One of my mom's 3rd graders found a men's shoe in his backpack one morning. Just one, not the pair. He didn't have an adult male living in his house and seemed to genuinely have absolutely no clue where the shoe came from. Once when I was in 5th grade, I opened my backpack at school to find all my books and binder missing, and that it was full of videotapes. My 6-year-old little sister seemed to think it'd be hilarious. I got in trouble for not having any of my books, school supplies or homework. I had like 6 VHS tapes instead. I'll share something an older co-worker, mid-50s, told me about one of the weirdest things he's seen while working as a teacher. While he was watching his class, younger kids, like probably 1st or 2nd graders, during recess, he noticed that several kids were missing after doing a head count. As he was out looking for them, he saw that some of the kids were pulling other kids aside and they were walking to the back of the school building. Obviously curious as to what was drawing so many of the kids, he walked back there. On a large rock, one of the girls had taken off her dress and was completely nude just laying there on the rock. There were a dozen or so kids just waving their hands over her like some kind of voodoo ritual. He yelled at them, basically going, "What the heck is going on here?" and they scattered. The little girl quickly putting her dress back on. It was apparently an awkward conversation with her parents. Kids are weird. One time I handed back a quiz to my 4th grade students. I told them I needed them back at the end of class so I could enter the grades into the grade book. Upon collecting the quizzes, one of the students, not happy with his grade, sheepishly handed me his crumpled up test that had holes eaten out of it. The last day of 5th grade, the kid next to me on the bus proclaimed math is useless to me now and proceeded to eat his entire textbook on the ride home, page by page. I had a student, 1st grade, who took his t-shirt and twisted it down around his chest so he was wearing it like a sleeveless gown. He was fine until he realized how tight it was and then he freaked out. The different kid who's always fighting raised his hand to answer a question for the first time that year. I called on him and he just started powering up like a Super Saiyan. He squatted, clenched his fists, and just started grunting and shaking. I let this go on for about 13 seconds. I thought he might be able to do it. It was hella dope. If I was the teacher in that situation, a part of me would believe he was preparing to crap on the floor. I substituted for 2 weeks at a high school facility for troubled youth. Fesses smeared all over the bathroom mirrors and stalls. Used condom filled with an unknown, sticky substance was flung at my desk. During a group activity that their previous teacher had assigned, 4 students had complained that their cell phones went missing. We decided to call the phone to investigate and we confiscated 6 cell phones inside a teenage boy's Air Jordan shoes. I confiscated an F to G encyclopedia that had the inside of the book cut out. The book concealed a rectangle compartment that had a tiny red velvet scented candle. No wonder the girl kept smelling her book for 8 days straight. So, I'm an English as a second language teacher, and I teach a lot of Japanese students. One Monday morning, I was making conversation with my students, asking what they'd done on the weekend and whatnot. One girl, maybe around 18, was talking about what she and her host father had gotten up to, and I was eavesdropping when I heard her say, "And then on Sunday my host father and I breast fucked. We usually breast fuck every Sunday." All the other students nodded and smiled. I nearly had a heart attack thinking I had a serious case of sexual abuse. Then I realized she'd tried to say breakfasted. ESL teaching. It's pretty bad but TLDR. Thought my student was being breast fucked. Turned out she was enjoying delicious breakfasts. A friend of mine's toddler son once kicked a rock and said, "I fricked it." My friend asked what he said. His son said, "I fricked it super confident, like I did it." No, Alex, you kicked it. I teach high school. Lots of weird stuff happens. 4 boys in one of my periods have formed bird gang. Bird gang consists of shouting birding at random intervals, making bird noises, drawing birds on everything, and changing their last names to Bird Gang. That is, John Bird Gang. They also have secret Bird Gang handshakes that involve arm flapping. I hate Bird Gang. A kid threw a rage fit because he closed the door too fast and it hit him in the face. Last year I had this student who was completely bananas. He got really good at shooting baby carrots out of his mouth. Once he nailed another kid right in the eye with a baby carrot. I would find baby carrots all over the room after he left. One time I gave him a pen, and not 30 seconds later he had ink smeared all over his face. Earlier this year, a student very gravely handed me a piece of paper at the end of class. On it was drawn a man ripping a spinal cord out of another man and the words "finish him" were written underneath. Like Mortal Kombat combat. No explanation was given. We got through a whole 90-minute period well, so I gave them the last 5 minutes as free time. One boy walked over to another and punched him in the face. Yesterday I had to write a referral for a kid because had climbed up on the back of a chair and was humping another student's shoulder. Someone took my marker basket and switched all the caps to all the pens, so the colors were mismatched. Penises are drawn on everything. Everywhere. All the time. All over school. Penises. I don't know who does it. Stealth penises. 4 boys in one of my periods have formed Bird Gang. Bird Gang consists of shouting birding at random intervals, making bird noises, drawing birds on everything, and changing their last names to Bird Gang. That is, John Bird Gang. They also have secret Bird Gang handshakes that involve arm flapping. I hate Bird Gang. Tunnel snakes rule. I had a 4th grade student about 10 years ago taking a test involving a green highlighter. When he turned in his test, he had green fingers, nostrils outlined in green and green lips. I worked within a city, at-risk middle schoolers. 1. A group of students would hide in the locker rooms during recess and have sex. 2. There was a group of boys we referred to as the Jo brothers because they would jerk each other off. This was apparently not gay. Everyone knew about it. 3. A boy randomly pee on the art teacher's floor. 4. A boy was caught with his hand down his pants jerking off in class. 5. A boy threw a teacher's computer, desktop, out a 3rd-story window. 6. A lot of weed smoking in the bathrooms that would come through the vents in the classrooms. 7. Middle school kids with tattoos. 8. Middle school kids with ankle brackets. 9. Middle school kids that had to be kept away from young children per court mandate. 10. A 7th grade girl prostituting herself. 11. I had to take a kid to court because he was so disruptive and sexually inappropriate I had to press charges, per the school's request. 12. A boy who ripped a female teacher's shirt off and was arrested for sexual assault. 13. I friended a former student on Facebook and he asked if he could send me dong pics. Unfriended real fast. These are just sad. Not me, but my mother. She is a special education teacher and had a particularly low functioning child with a very interesting ahem crappy family life. The boy probably had an IQ of about 60. He was very tall for his age, but lean. Zero social skills. His mother would openly state in front of him that he was a product of rape. He was a hard kid to like, but my mom tried. She is very empathetic and tried her best with this child, and I had him in my class when he was older and talking to him was like talking to a snail, but less enthralling. Anyways, he came up to her after he went to the bathroom and showed her that he had a worm in his hand and stated, "I pooped this." He had tapeworms, and decided to show his teacher. She said he seemed kind of proud. She started increasing her retirement fund that year. Oh my god, that's awful. Poor kid. God only knows how bad his home was if he had tapeworms. I hope he got proper medical care. Had this conversation with a group of 8th grade boys. Boy: "Miss, did you know if you lick someone's elbow they can't feel it?" Me: "What?" Boy: "Yeah, we just licked your elbow 3 times and you didn't even notice." Apparently it's true. It's because you don't have nerve endings in elbows. You can pinch it really hard and barely feel a thing. Not a teacher, but I'm currently engaged to one. She's told me some amazing stories, but one always sticks out. She had a student whom we shall refer to as Frog Boy. So, apparently Frog Boy is pretty intelligent, B grade student, and has a fairly normal group of friends. However, he has a collection of top frogs that he lines up on the desk in front of him at the start of each lesson. One day one of these fell on the floor and my fiancée picked one up and put it on her desk and told Frog Boy he could have it at the end of the lesson. He walked straight up to her and stared at her for 2 minutes until she gave it back. After she returned the frog to Frog Boy, he pinched her cheek, like one's uncle would do to a child relative, and uttered, "That's a good girl." He then spent the rest of the lesson stroking his friend's hand to calm down. This didn't happen in my classroom, but it was a student I worked with. So the student did not want to be in class, so he got up and left the classroom. This student is an 8th grader, and he walked into a random 7th grade math class where he did not know the students nor the teacher, sat down, and continuously shouted, "I eat butthole." He refused to leave and did not stop until security arrived. After speaking with other teachers and the principal about this situation, one teacher was saying how he might not be receiving proper attention at home, so we should just be super encouraging with him. So I automatically said, "So what would you do?" Say, "Great job. Name. You eat that butthole." Everyone laughed, but I probably shouldn't have said that in front of my boss. We had a dude in class somewhat like that. He climbed out the window of one class, and we're talking about 4-5 meters off the ground, and into the window of another class. Neither teacher noticed. He also pretended to be severely mentally handicapped when we had substitute teachers. Giving some year 9 math papers back once, a kid who had achieved an A promptly burst into tears, started screaming profanities at me while tearing the paper into tiny pieces. He threw the pieces of paper onto the floor and stormed out. The rest of the class and I are just like, WTF. Apparently he'd never scored below an A before. Lack of resilience is becoming a huge issue. Take note, helicopter parents out there. Another time, year 9 science class. I'm drawing a diagram of something on the board that I want the class to copy. I turn to the class briefly and notice a girl at the back texting. I tell her to bring the phone to me in the next 2 minutes or I'll send her to the deputy principal. I turn back to the board to finish the diagram and let her make her decision. About 30 seconds later her phone smashes into the board beside and disintegrates into about 4,000 pieces. Scares the living crap out of me. Apparently she threw it at me from the back. She ends up at the DP's office anyway. Fun times. Another one that comes to mind. Allowed at the back of a year 11 low-level math class is playing with a football. I ask him to throw it to me to stop him being distracted by it. A very large, like 130 kg, very autistic boy, barely functional, sits in the front row. The ball, of course, nails the autistic knot right in the back of the head. He sits perfectly still for about 5 seconds and then falls out of chair and smashes into the floor without trying to break his fall. I'm thinking, great, he's dead. I go over to him, eyes closed, not moving. I shake his shoulder a few times. Nothing. I'm packing it. Then, all of a sudden his eyes flick open and a massive grin appears on his face. He gets up laughing. Never saw him laugh before or since. Moth Earth. Allowed at the back of a year 11 low-level math class. I'm gonna start calling obnoxious people louds. I'm sure my second grade teacher would say when I stood up in the middle of the test and sang Frosty the Snowman, then sat back down and aced the test. I thought this was a dream for the longest time until someone from my class asked me about it. I was a weird freaking kid. This made me laugh way too hard. I'm a substitute teacher and I can totally picture this. My dad was a teacher in the 70s and 80s. He said a kid had somehow tied a hair around a housefly and was using it as a leash, taking it for a walk on his desk. A person at my dad's work would do the same with bees. He kept them alive by feeding them sugar water, if I remember correctly. I taught English in another country. One weekend. It was a national holiday, so only 3 of my usual class, kindergarten age, 2 boys and a girl, showed up. This one kid immediately decided his name was Luke for the day and dubbed the other kids Leia and Han. The other kids decided to go with it because they thought it was funny, and how could I refuse? So for one class, I taught Luke, Leia and Han. Thank you, little Star Wars obsessed Russian kid, for one of the most amusing classes I've ever had. Another kid in the class refused to answer to anything but Spider-Man for weeks, earlier on in the year. Other students in my school. Let's see. One university exchange student offered us his services as a shoplifter. He'd steal any game at GameStop for a World of Warcraft subscription card. One very stoned girl asked her woodshop teacher how to make a bong. He helped her. A 6-foot tall, extremely skinny white guy wanted to be a rapper. Desperately. He wore marijuana and dollar bill printed shirts and screamed at people constantly for getting dirt on his kicks. He got expelled halfway through the year. No clue for what. Kid inexplicably showed up wearing 3 bulletproof jackets. No more, no less. Turns out he wanted to sell them. We are in a rural area. Not exactly sure why. The one time I had to take summer school, due to absences, I needed it to pass to high school. A female student casually drank vodka from her backpack. Daily. I've had someone plagiarize someone's previous work so completely that they even copied the comments I wrote when marking it. I've got a 6th grader who has been exposed to a bit more media than the rest of his classmates. He spends most of class making sex noises and sexually flicking his tongue at poor Jennifer. This week we started on the coordinate plane, so whenever we have to find D, it's always met with a female moan. How far do we have to run to get to the D? Thank God sex ed started this week. I'm just in my first year. I'm sure I'll get more stories as my career goes on. I am currently teaching middle school English in China. One of my students acquired the nickname Turtle somehow. For about a month and a half, his whole class was trying to force the nickname to stick in place of his regular English name. This involved constantly bringing up turtles in class, no matter what the topic was. Only once I threatened to involve their regular teacher did they stop, and they are now one of my favorite classes. I taught 4th grade in Honduras for 1 year. The kids were allowed to use the bathroom if they asked in English, but they couldn't ask right after lunch because it typically meant they just wanted to waste 5 more minutes of class playing outside. I said no to a kid one day, so he stood up and peed into a bottle in the back of the classroom. I revoked the rule. Similar thing happened to me in school, but I crap in my backpack. Not a teacher, but from my educational past. 2nd grade. My classroom was one of the bigger ones in the school, so it was used to store extra desks in the back. One day, a student, we'll call him Sean, decided he didn't want to come to school, so he crawled to the back of the storage of desks. The area was about 5 desks deep and 4 wide, and declared it his fault. He refused to come out, so the teacher told him to get out. He said no. She tried to grab him, and he stabbed her with a pencil. He's left alone for an hour, with the teaching thinking he will eventually come out. He doesn't. So she calls the principal. Same thing happens. He says get out. Sean says no and takes a swipe with a pencil. They leave him alone again. They call his mom at lunchtime. While on the phone, Sean screams at his mom that he isn't coming out. Eventually his dad showed up and Sean got out of his fort really quick. Another time, a kid, we'll call him Samuel, decided he wanted to go home. He asked our teacher if he could go to the bathroom. He left and about 5 minutes later our teacher asks where Samuel is. I look out the window. We were on the second floor. I go, Madam, French school. Samuel is outside and walking home. She rushed to the window, and at that moment Samuel looks back and sees her. So he takes off in this weird heel run power walk thing. Like he only landed on his heels, never the front of his foot. She calls the principal. He goes after him. Samuel throws his show at the principal and keeps running. Principal catches him and brings him back. Parents called and back to class he came. You snitch. Standing at front door duty in the morning, in walks a student. Apparently, his book bag had been near the laundry basket because there was a flowery bra attached via static cling. He was immediately ushered into the office so that he could save face. After a phone call home, it was determined to be his grandmother's bra. Anyway, it was discreetly put into an envelope with the child's name on it. It was given to his teacher, with instructions to send it home in this kid's book bag and do not open it. The teacher sent it home with the wrong kid. Similar name. So kid B, also a boy, went home with a bra in his book bag, and no explanation why. Student shows up in fancy suit complete with pocket square and watch chain. Me. Do you have a job interview today? Student. No. Me. Why the suit? Student. Shrugs. So earlier we're doing this thing where I go through the alphabet and they name a food for each letter. A for apple, B for banana, etc. Anyways, we get to B and this woman says pineapple. I cannot explain it. I was sitting at a low table with a group of 3-year-olds and the one nearest me bent her head to my hand that was on the table and started licking the back of my hand. Little kids do odd things. I teach adult ESL. My students are English teachers. I usually get fantastic reviews and take my job very seriously. Recently I finished a program with a class of 20 women. In a lesson I did, we were discussing a news article where the phrase squirt came up in the context of like condiments. One very outspoken and feminist teacher raised her hand and made a joke about how squirt also had a sexual meaning. I did the right thing and said that that wasn't the meaning here and it simply meant to shoot out quickly or spray, like if you put your spoon in a grapefruit. I received my reviews and the responses were overwhelmingly favorable except for this same student. Her response was that I had taught them about sexual terminology in class including the word squirt and that she wants to sue me for sexual harassment. My supervisors are unanimously on my side and after showing the lesson plan and materials, they've removed the comment from my history and spoke with her. Absolutely baffling to me why she would say that about me when she brought it up and I professionally deflected back to the lesson. I could easily lose my job or have my teaching record tarnished over a claim like this, but my record and performance have helped to protect me from this claim and I'm sure to be even more cautious now when I teach. So anytime someone says squirt to her is sexual harassment. I freaking hope no one ever says sausage to her. I work with kids who have autism and one 7-year-old in particular says crazy crap all the time because of the amount of YouTube he watches. One time, he just randomly says, "The weed is dinky." Another time, we're reading an educational book that mentions stomach acid. He then asks, "Can't you get high from that?" Kid will be a strong memer when he gets older. GF is a teacher. Asked her your question. She said in her 14 years of teaching everything can be explained by her students being 1. Idiots and 2. Stewing in hormones. Not a teacher but was in a 10th grade English class. Teacher leaves the classroom to go do something. Kid immediately stands up, opens the window and starts throwing textbooks out without saying a word. Everyone else is losing it because it didn't make any sense. Best part was that we were on the second floor and the office was right below us. So the principal and VPS got a good look at what anarchy looks like through Shakespeare raining from the sky. Hahaha, have a upvote for Anarchy and Rain made our classic literature. I was the student, but my friend and I in one class formed the Confetti Liberation Front. We would empty the little paper circles from the 3-hole punch and throw them out the window and write CLF on the chalkboard whenever our teacher left the room. He caught us multiple times and didn't look impressed. I once tutored a kid chemistry for the IB syllabus. His textbook other files were all on his computer, in his USB, and so he went to open them. Except he somehow opened a video of some cartoon girl screaming and getting assaulted by tentacles. There was no speakers, but headphones, which were right next to me so I could hear the moans traveling to my right ear. I had only heard and seen 5 seconds of it, but that was enough. I was really surprised, and just sat there while he panicked and closed all windows. It was quite an experience for me, which happened about 4 years ago, and since then I've unfortunately run into more videos like those. Thank that kid for giving me a sneak peek. Every IB kid has at least one weird way to relieve the stress caused by the program. Not a teacher but a friend who has told me that one of her 5th grade students started asking other students how to jack off. Needless to say, the principal of the school suspended the poor kid. This 5th grader is curious and acting immaturely. Better make sure he gets out of school. When I was in school, a friend of mine snorted a salt packet for $1. Also, 2 girls flashed me and another friend of mine for $1. I went to school with people who really understood the meaning of $1. When I was in boarding school, there was this one girl we could get to eat almost anything for the promise of $1. Usually it was just like the scraps of people's desserts with sauce and pepper and cordial and leftover rice added, or something equally gross but still food. But once we got her to lick a beater off the dining room floor, we never actually paid her. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.